Hello varlets, welcome to the weapon review for the Agripinaa Mk combat shotgun. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you for all the positive feedback from the last weapon review. I shall continue to develop weapon reviews in this format going forward. Now let's talk about this shotgun. The Agripinaa Mk is one of two shotguns released in the Tools of War update, and as soon as I got my hands on it, I knew this was going to be one of the first weapons I would do a review on. There's a lot to learn and there's a lot to love about this weapon, and I will say now, it's important that you stay towards the end because there's going to be a pretty important discussion about this weapon there. So let's get stuck in. Here are the 5 things you need to know about the Agripinaa Mk combat shotgun. Number 1. Damage fall-off ranges. Since this weapon doesn't have a range stat for you to mouse over and see, one of the first things I did was test out how far you can shoot before you start losing damage. So after a lot of testing, I've compiled the fall-off ranges for you in this little table here. Fall-off start means the distance you start to lose damage, and fall-off end means the distance where your damage bottoms out and won't go any lower. Damage floor simply means how much of your total damage you lose by the time you reach the fall-off end. So if I had to sum up this table in as few words as possible, ADS when you can and stay within 20 meters for maximum damage potential. A side note, your damage stat on a weapon doesn't affect damage fall-off. It's the same whether you have 80% damage or 1% damage. Number 2. Pinpoint accurate special. The special attack of this weapon loads in a single slug that does heavy damage and has a high weak spot multiplier, dealing between 40% to 100% more damage on hit shots depending on the armor type. That slug that you loaded is pinpoint accurate and will go anywhere your mouse points. It is accurate while in air, while you are moving, or while you're sliding. So, knowing this, I hope to see a cool montage of 360 no-scope 40-meter sniper headshots in the coming future. Number 3. The Slug Special has tremendous stagger. Its stagger strength is on par with the trauma staff and the kickback, and can knock anything it hits down to the ground, except for mutants. This means you can stun Reapers while they are firing, you can break a Bulwark's guard, and you can knock down a Crusher on its ass. This feature alone gives the weapon a tremendous amount of supporting utility that benefits your team, so don't be afraid to use it as an instant CC tool to keep threats away from you and your team. Number 4. If you have no reserves, you cannot use the special. This means the last mag of your gun is a basic shotgun that is slightly worse than the Lawbringer in terms of raw damage output. So with this in mind, if you intend to solely use this weapon for its special, which is a perfectly fine thing to do, you probably need to control your compulsive reloading habits, since if you have no more ammo in reserve, you have no more slug rounds to use. So that's something to keep in mind. Number 5. Build recommendation. Okay, so this is the important part that I want to talk about from earlier. Before we get into the discussion, let's talk about perks and blessings. As usual, here's a table of blessings so you can see what's available for this weapon. In my opinion, looking through these blessings, I think there are really only 4 useful ones that turns into 2 core builds. Build number 1 is the Frontline Assault build. This build pairs together Death Spitter and Fire Frenzy. This pairing is designed to take on shooters in close quarters, gaining more and more damage as you kill, which makes subsequent kills that much easier as you start stacking more and more damage. The increasing power buff also artificially extends your range as the higher damage allows you to reach breakpoints from further away. Moving on, the second build is where this weapon really shines and should honestly be the pairing you grind for first. That is No Respite and Full Ball. Let's go through the blessings to understand them a little, starting with No Respite. The blessing reads as follows. Gain up to 12.5% to 20% damage on hit, staggered enemy, scaling with stagger. This means the first shot you take on your own to an unstaggered enemy doesn't apply the damage buff. After the first shot, or if someone else staggers the enemy, the next shot you take will gain the damage buff. This will keep stacking additively and infinitely with every subsequent shot until the enemy dies or recovers from their stagger. The other blessing you want is Full Ball. Full Ball reads, assuming tier 4, gain a 15% power bonus for 5 seconds when every pellet in a shot hits the same enemy. The reason why you want this blessing is because the Slug Special technically counts as a single pellet, and as long as you hit the enemy with the slug, no matter where, you'll activate Full Ball for an easy 15% power bonus. These two blessings pair extremely well together because the first slug shot staggers and opens up your target to be destroyed by the buffed up shots that come after. They work together for a massive, I'm talking massive damage boost. Let me show you the potential. So, I have an Agripinaa Mk here with No Respite 3 and Full Ball 2, and we're going to test it out first on this Reaper. I have a slug loaded in already. That's 3 shots to down a Reaper. Well, that's 1 crit. Let's do that again. 3 shots, easy. On the Bulwark. 4 shots. And since I'm on a Preacher, I must also show you how we can deal with a Crusher. Was that 4 or 5 shots? But you get the point. You see how devastating the damage the damage output is. So, as you can see, the damage of these 2 blessings together is devastating and works without having to get any kills. Now that we've talked about blessings, let's talk about the best perks before we go into class discussions, which is where the important parts are. For perks, depending on the build you go for, it will either be a combination of damage against Flak, Maniac, and Undying. Though, if you want to specialize into build 2, which I assume you'll want to, then you should take Unyielding and Maniac for maximum destruction against Specials and Ogrins. Now, let's talk about how this shotgun works with the 2 classes that can use it, the Vet and the Preacher. Let's start with the Vet. On the surface, it can seem like this weapon pairs nicely with the Vet's skills and feats. You get a free 15% damage to weak spot, which synergizes perfectly with the Slug Shot. You can make an Ogrin killing build that one-shots Reapers and can hold its own against Bulwarks without any problems. Here's a look at that in some Damnation gameplay. You can make the frontline assault build work with sustained fire to fully reload your weapon and double down on the offensive with mega damage buffs against shooters. And despite all these good things that I'm saying about the Vet, I don't think this weapon is suitable for the Vet's playstyle. And it's not because it's bad, it's because with what you want to do with this weapon, other weapons can do better. You want to do shooter management? The Hit-Hunter autoguns, Las Guns, and Hellbores do a much better job, are more forgiving for misses because this gun only has 13 rounds in it, so that's at best you kill 13 shooters. And you can do it from a safer range, which leverages the Vet's strength in positioning and sustain fire much more effectively. As for dealing with Crushers and Bulwarks, you have the Bolter and Plasma Gun to deal with that without giving up your range advantage either. You are making an active trade-off by using this weapon on your Vet. And so, for these reasons, I don't think this shotgun fully makes use of the Vet's strengths, and in fact, it puts you at a disadvantage by forcing you to be closer to the front lines. But this is my opinion after taking it into Damnation for a few games. Feel free to disagree and share what you think in the comments below. On the other hand, this weapon is an excellent S-tier weapon for Preachers. 4 Damnation games with my Vet and I felt handicapped. 1 Damnation game with my Preacher and I knew this weapon was going to be my main for her. And you're happy with it, aren't you, Alex?
Indeed, indeed!
Let me explain why this is the case. If you are a Revolver Preacher, as I am, then this shotgun is a side grade to the Revolver in some ways, but a straight upgrade in many others. While you give up the agility and penetration strength of the Revolver, you gain a larger magazine size to deal with shooters, a Slug Shot to deal with longer range threats, and have more utility than the Revolver. Because you're naturally in the front lines as a Preacher, tearing heretics apart in melee, melee combatants and shooters that you lock in melee aren't a problem for you. Instead, the shooters that aren't locked in melee, snipers and bombers, are the things that will give you problems. This weapon solves those problems for you and makes up for the Preacher's weaknesses. It gives you a range answer for specials while you are in melee, like the Revolver. It gives you the ability to contribute and support the team if it's too hot to dive into melee. Now, you might argue that the Flamer can solve these problems, up to 22 meters away at least. But with the impending adjustment to it, not only does the shotgun serve as an alternative, but it's more ammo efficient with its utility, and more importantly, doesn't blind your teammates from firing as well. On top of that, this weapon actually makes very good use of a feat I'm sure most of you have forgotten existed, and that is Emperor's Executioner. This feat gives you more range damage based on how close you are with your target. So remember me killing those Ogrins from earlier? You can do it even better with this feat. It's like having a Vet's Volley Fire active all the time if you're going to be blasting enemies in close range, which as a Preacher, you will always be in. And it's because the shotgun gels with the Preacher's playstyle and makes up for his weaknesses a Preacher would normally have, this weapon is actually an improvement to the potential of the class rather than taking away from it like it does for the Vet. And that is why I feel this shotgun is made for the Preacher rather than to be something used on the Vet. So, with that, I hope you found this video useful. Let's talk about the shotgun and how it pairs with the Vet and the Preacher, and your experiences with it in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Varlets.